Doing this to a fruit tree is essential for its longevity and productivity. Pruning your fruit trees keeps them healthy and manageable, and knowing when and where to cut can make all the difference. Pruning is something magical and something that can and arguably should be done to a fruit tree every single year. The process stimulates hormonal changes throughout the tree and redirects growth to your benefit. But pruning your fruit trees at the wrong times can lead to pests, insects, and disease, and eventually a dead tree. And believe me, I've been there. In the winter, trees are dormant, and there's also less pressure from those insects, pests, and disease, which make it the perfect time for pruning your tree. And with the reserves of energy from the previous season, your cuts are going to heal much quicker and the growth is going to be more vigorous. Just make sure the temperatures are in the upper 20s or above, so that way after you make your pruning cuts, your tree can begin to heal. Proper placement of each pruning cut can make a significant difference in your fruit tree's productivity. When I remove a branch or set of branches, your tree acts like a hydra. When I cut off one head, 2 more heads can form, and that's going to increase my overall fruit production. So the first thing that I want to do before I make what I call my productivity cuts is remove the dead, broken, and diseased branches, which are going to affect the tree's overall health. And as I'm looking over this tree right here, and this is my 3-year-old Comice pear tree, I really don't see any of that, so I'm extremely lucky. But I want to make sure that I remove those branches first because it's going to maintain the health of the tree for decades to come. Next, water sprouts and suckers, they've got to grow. And you'll most likely see water sprouts on a horizontal branch, and a water sprout will be a vertical branch, one that's growing straight upwards. These are going to grow extremely tall. They're going to produce a lot of vegetative growth, but they're really not susceptible for growing good fruit. So if you have those on your tree, fortunately I don't have any here, you're going to want to remove them. Similar to a water spout, we're going to be talking about suckers. Suckers come off of the base of the tree where your tree is grafted. I have a root stock here, and you can see how this wood is different. This is the root stock. This is the root that we're using to grow the tree in our specific soil. Our actual fruit tree, my Comice pear, was grafted onto that root stock. So if you see branches growing out of your root stock called suckers, you're going to want to remove those because you do not want to grow the fruit of your rootstock. You want the energy to be focused onto growing the fruit of your preferred variety. Now that we've made the cuts to maintain the overall health of the tree for decades to come, we're going to be starting with our thinning cuts. And this is just as it sounds. We're going to thin out the tree and remove the branches that we don't want. So let's do some. I've got one branch right here, and the reason why I want to remove this branch is because it's going in toward the middle of the tree. So I'm going to come into here and just remove this branch. And the reason why I chose to remove this branch, since it's going in toward the center of the tree, it's going to shade out other portions of the tree. It's going to restrict airflow, maintain humidity, and promote disease. So that's why I'm going to go through my whole tree and first remove all of the branches that are growing inward. So let's make a few more. I've got another one, actually quite a few of them. I see right here, this branch is going inward. This branch is growing inward, so I'm going to come around and make this cut. And when I'm doing this, I'm looking for the collar of this branch. You can see how the wood changes right here. This is the tree's or the branch's collar. So when I make my cut, I want it to be right on that collar right there. Let's make it and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. And you can see this old growth, and now this is a great cut. Let's show you what a perfectly healed cut looks like. Cutting it at the collar is going to promote that cut, and it's going to heal it properly, like this one right here. This is a cut that I've made, a thinning cut that I made in the previous years. You see that nice donut shape? That cut is completely healed over. So when you make these cuts, you got to make sure you leave enough of the wood so that way you can properly heal over and grow into this outward branch. When I'm doing my thinning cuts, I also want to remove branches that are crossing or branches that have multiple nodes coming out. So you can see I have a branch right here, and I also have another branch that's popping out. So I'm going to want to remove this branch since this one is so much more dominant. Or even worse, look at this grouping down here. These are crossing and also coming out of the same node. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove all of these branches from this area. And this is really gonna force that energy that all of this was removing from the tree into the branches that are going to produce fruit. And since we're talking about that, when you're thinning out your tree, you want to make sure you do not remove the fruiting spurs. And every single tree, it's going to look a little bit different. But you see this little tiny branch that's coming off here. It kind of looks like a bud. This is a fruiting spur of our pear tree right here. So I do not want to remove this branch because this is where all of the fruit is actually going to be produced. And if I remove that, we're going to actually negatively affect the fruit production of this tree, and then you're gonna have to wait even longer to get your fruit. Now that we've finished making all of our thinning cuts, the next cut and the final cut that we're going to make are our heading cuts. So let's do some and I'll show you exactly what I mean. And I'm going to be doing these cuts to reduce the overall size of the tree. You could see how big this tree is, and a lot of this is new growth. And the purpose of these heading cuts is to reduce the size of the tree and keep it manageable for you. So for every single person, this is going to be different. But anytime you're making a pruning cut, it should be your goal to make as little cuts as possible, because every time you open up a wound to a tree, it's going to require energy to heal. But I still want to make sure that I can manage this tree, because an unmanaged tree is just asking for a disaster to happen for that insects, pests, and disease, and then you're gonna completely lose your fruit tree and all of its productivity. So the very first thing that I'm gonna do is reduce the height of the tree. I never want it taller than my height right here. So every single cut I need to make, I need to analyze. Let's show you an old cut that I made first. This one right here was an old heading cut that I made. And I headed off this branch at a node, which then forced it to grow a new longer branch that is going to produce even more fruit. So when I'm looking to make a heading cut, I'm looking to make it right above one of these buds right here, because that will cause hormonal changes to happen inside of the tree at this bud, which will cause this bud to grow out into a new branch, just like we see right here, really extending the tree's ability to produce even more fruit. So this is going to take the most amount of time, because you really need to think about how each individual cut is going to affect the shape of your tree. The way that I like to do it is look for any outward facing buds. And I have a bud right here that is outward facing, so I know when I make this cut, this branch is going to continue to grow outward and prevent that inward facing growth. So when I make this cut right here, I want to use my pruners, I want to cut it so that way the bottom of the cut is going to be in line with this bud, just like that. So if I drew a straight line right here, that bottom of the cut is in line with that bud, and that's going to give enough wood for this wound to heal and create a good scab. Let's make a few more. So I've got another branch right here, and again, I'm looking for that outward facing bud and aiming to remove as little as possible. So I've got another bud right here. So let's cut that one off, just like that. And now I'm just gonna work through my tree, and my goal is to cut or head every single branch to keep it manageable and to force this new growth to occur. Another great reason to make your heading cuts, and let's just do one more on this branch. I want this one to grow out this way, and I've got this outward bud right here. So let's get a close up on that just so you can really see what's happening. I want the bottom of the cut to be right at that bud, just like that. But when I make this cut, not only is it going to force energy into this bud to grow outward, but if we go down the branch here, you can see that it forces even more branches to grow lower on the original branch. And if you'll notice, a lot of these are fruiting spurs. So that energy gets redirected throughout the branch, and that is what's going to make this tree more productive and produce you more fruit. I know pruning your fruit trees can seem intimidating, But hopefully walking through these steps can make you feel more confident in knowing that every single cut you can make can significantly affect the productivity of your tree. My name's Phil from Earth Nails and Tails. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.